Welcome to the deep dive. Today we're tackling a big one, a question lots of people grapple with. Can love, really happen twice? We're going to get into it by looking closely at the book, Can Love Happen Twice?
Yeah, and just quickly, it's important to be clear, right? There's sometimes a bit of confusion. Our sources confirm we're talking about Ravinder Singh's book here. People often group him with Chetan Bhagat, both big names in Indian romance fiction. But this deep dive, it's specifically Singh's work we're unpacking.
Okay, good clarification, because that first book of his carries so much, personal weight. So our mission today, really explore the emotional journey in this novel, the sequel. We'll look at the plot, what critics thought, and try to figure out what it tells us about healing, second chances, and maybe what makes a love story click, or sometimes why it doesn't quite land.
Exactly. And for context, right off the bat, Can Love Happen Twice isn't just some standalone romance. It's the direct sequel to his first book, I Too Had a Love Story. And that one, famously, was based on his own very real, very tragic experience.
Wow, so he's actually building this fictional story right on top of his real life. That must create really unique pressure for a sequel, doesn't it? How does knowing that background maybe change how you even read this second story?
Oh, absolutely. It sets a pretty poignant stage. The story starts with the main character, Raven, trying to, move forward after that huge loss. He's in Belgium, actually, when the book opens. And there he meets Seema. She's portrayed as quite independent, maybe different from his first love.
Okay, so Raven's journey is about healing, finding his feet again emotionally. It's fascinating, this idea of can you really open up to new love after something like that? Or does the past always cast a shadow? What are the big challenges the book digs into? Themes of healing and hope.
Well, that's the core, really. The book definitely dives into him grappling with that grief, but also these completely new feelings for Seymour. To ask that big question, how do you open your heart again? So yeah, themes of healing, searching for hope, they're front and center.
And it sounds like readers really connect with that internal struggle in Ravine, that push and pull between past and present. It's relatable, isn't it? The review we looked at praises that emotional depth, says it kind of continues the feel of the first book. Plus, it mentions the language is pretty simple, easy to get into, makes it a quick read, especially maybe for younger readers.
Right. But, with all that emotion, how does it hold up as a story? That's where some critics, they had a slightly different take. The plot, for instance. Some found it a bit predictable, maybe a little too sentimental for their taste.
Ah, okay. So the emotional core is there, but maybe the narrative structure felt a bit familiar. And I think you mentioned something about Samar's character, like maybe she wasn't quite as developed as Ravine. That could affect how invested you get in their relationship, right? And maybe some parts felt a bit rushed.
That's definitely a point raised. Yeah, Seemar's characterization is sometimes seen as less deep compared to Ravine's journey. And look, when your first book is rooted in such a powerful, real tragedy like I Too Had a Love Story, it just sets an incredibly high emotional bar. It's almost tough for a fictional second love story to compete with that initial raw impact. Some fans do say this one feels, less impactful than the first.
Right, that makes sense. So wrapping this part up for you listening, despite those points, the general takeaway seems to be it's a, quote, decent read,
Yeah.
especially if you like contemporary Indian romance and maybe if you're looking for something emotional but ultimately hopeful. But it brings us back to you. What really resonates when you read a story about finding love again after loss? Do our own ideas about second chances shape how we experience these stories?
Yeah, I think Can Love Happen Twice offers this really touching, even if sometimes predictable, look at resilience, at finding hope again. But it also highlights something interesting about storytelling itself, how that memory of a first powerful story can kind of color how we see the next chapter. It just reminds us emotional journeys are, complex, not always neat.
Which leaves us with maybe this thought to chew on. If a story about a second love, even when connected to real events, can feel less impactful sometimes, what does that say about emotional resonance itself? Is it all about how the story's told? Or is it more tied up in our own lives, our own experiences, and maybe that unique power of a first big love? How does that memory shape what's even possible next?